What would you do if one night your phone rang and the caller ID showed your mother's name? The same mother who died years ago. That's what happened to Emily. At first, she thought it was a glitch, maybe a cruel prank. But when she answered, the voice on the other end was the one she knew better than anyone else. Her mom's voice. Soft, broken, whispering her name. From that night, Emily's life turned into a nightmare. The calls didn't stop. The texts got darker. And soon the dead number didn't just want to talk. It wanted her. Lucas was 21 years old when he first came to the small countryside village. He had planned to stay with his aunt for a few weeks, away from the noisy city. The village was calm, almost too quiet, with old wooden houses, empty streets, and forests that looked endless. On his very first evening, Lucas decided to explore. He walked to the only cafe in town, a small place with yellow lights and wooden chairs. The moment he stepped inside, the locals turned to look at him. Their eyes followed him in silence, as if they already knew he was an outsider. Lucas smiled politely and ordered a cup of tea. Trying to start a friendly conversation, he asked the man at the counter, "Hey, is there a lake nearby? I heard something about it." The cafe suddenly went silent. The old man at the counter froze, staring at him. A woman sitting near the window shook her head quickly, almost warning him without words. Finally, a gray-haired lady sitting in the corner whispered, her voice trembling, "You must not go there. The lake is cursed. It does not give people back. Once you see it, you can never escape it." Lucas laughed nervously. "It's just a lake, right? A little water never hurt anyone." The woman leaned forward, her pale eyes fixed on him. "It's not the water that hurts, boy, it's what lives beneath it." For a moment, Lucas felt a strange chill crawl up his spine. The way everyone stared at him made the air feel heavier. But then he forced a smile and shook his head. "All right," he said lightly. "I'll stay away." But deep inside, he was curious. Why would a simple lake scare an entire village? What could be so dangerous about still water? Lucas didn't believe in ghost stories. He thought the villagers were just being dramatic. He didn't know then that the warning was real, and ignoring it would change everything. Later that night, Lucas sat in his aunt's living room with his cousins, Noah and Eliza. The fireplace burned softly, throwing shadows on the wooden walls. The three of them talked for hours, until the conversation shifted to the one thing everyone in the village avoided, the lake. Eliza's voice dropped low as she leaned closer. "They don't like to talk about it, but the stories are true. People disappear there. My classmate's brother. He went swimming last summer. They never found his body." Noah smirked, though his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. "Some say the lake doesn't drown people. It takes them, swallows them whole." Lucas chuckled, shaking his head. "You guys really believe that? Come on, it's just a scary story to keep kids away from the water." But Noah wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his tone playful but sharp. "Then prove it. Go there. Midnight tonight. Stand by the water and see for yourself." Eliza gasped. "No, don't. That's not funny." Noah shrugged. "If it's only a story, then Lucas has nothing to be afraid of, right?" Lucas paused for a moment. The cafe woman's warning echoed in his mind. The lake doesn't give people back. A shiver crawled down his arms, but he quickly covered it with a grin. "Fine. I'll go. Midnight at the lake. I'll even throw a rock in, just to show you nothing happens." Eliza shook her head, fear in her eyes. "Don't do it, Lucas. You don't understand. Once you go near that water, it doesn't forget you." But Lucas only laughed. He thought his cousins were trying to scare him, the way kids tell ghost stories at sleepovers. He didn't realize their fear was real. By agreeing to the dare, Lucas had unknowingly stepped into a trap set not by his cousins, but by the lake itself. The clock struck 11:50 when Lucas slipped out of the house. The night was colder than he expected, the kind of cold that sank into his skin. The sky was dark, the moon struggling to shine through heavy clouds. He followed the narrow dirt path that led toward the forest, flashlight in hand. The deeper he went, the quieter it became. No crickets. No rustling leaves. Only the crunch of his own footsteps. The silence was so thick, it pressed against his ears like a weight. The trees stood tall and close together, their twisted branches stretching out like claws. A soft mist drifted between them, crawling low across the ground. Lucas pulled his jacket tighter, trying to shake off the strange feeling creeping up his spine. Halfway down the trail, he thought he heard something behind him, soft footsteps, matching his own. He spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the fog. Nothing. Only the shadows of trees, unmoving, watching. He told himself it was just his imagination, that the silence of the forest was playing tricks on him. Still, he quickened his pace, his breath puffing in the cold air. A few minutes later, he passed a crooked wooden sign nailed to a tree. The paint had long faded, but one word was still clear enough to read. Stay away. Lucas stopped, staring at the warning. His chest tightened, but then he smirked. Really? Even the signs are trying to scare me now. He pressed forward, ignoring the way the path seemed narrower, darker, as though the forest itself didn't want him there. Finally, the trees began to thin, and through the fog, he caught a glimpse of something. A wide black surface, still and silent. The lake. It waited at the end of the trail, dark as glass under the pale moonlight. And though Lucas couldn't explain why, he felt like the water already knew he was coming. Lucas stepped out of the trees and onto the muddy shore. The lake spread before him, wider than he imagined, but eerily silent. The water looked unnatural, black and perfectly still, as if it weren't water at all but a sheet of glass laid across the earth. The moon hung low, its pale light breaking through the fog and reflecting on the surface in broken, jagged pieces. A strange chill filled the air. Lucas rubbed his arms, though the night wasn't cold enough for the shivers running through him. He tried to laugh it off. It's just water, he muttered. But his voice sounded small against the heavy silence. He stood there, waiting for something, maybe a ripple, maybe the sound of a frog or an owl. But the lake gave nothing back. Not a wave. Not a sound. Just emptiness. Lucas crouched and picked up a small stone. His fingers trembled slightly, though he told himself it was only because of the chill. He weighed the stone in his hand and tossed it across the surface. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the water reacted, but not the way it should. Instead of rippling outward, the surface stretched, bending like thin skin. Shapes formed where the stone hit, curling upward into something almost human. Lucas froze. The shape became a pale, twisted face. Its mouth wide open in a silent scream, eyes hollow, staring straight at him. He stumbled backward, his heart racing. No, that's not real, he whispered. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, and when he looked again, the lake was perfectly still. The face was gone. Lucas let out a shaky laugh, trying to steady his breath. It's just my mind. Just a trick of the light. But deep inside, a voice whispered otherwise. The lake wasn't calm. It was watching, waiting. And the more Lucas stared at that dark surface, the more he felt it was staring back. Lucas stood frozen at the edge of the lake, his heart still racing from what he thought he saw. The forest behind him was silent, the fog thick, and the water stretched before him like a dark mirror. He told himself again. It's nothing. Just tired eyes. Just the shadows. But the uneasy weight pressing on his chest didn't go away. Determined to prove it was only his imagination, Lucas bent down and grabbed another stone, larger this time. He tossed it hard into the middle of the lake. The rock hit with a dull splash. For a moment, he expected the normal rings of water to spread outward. Instead, the surface of the lake pulsed, one deep shiver, as if the entire body of water had taken a single breath. Then slowly the ripples began to form. But they didn't move outward. They moved inward. Every wave pulled back toward the center of the lake, as if something was sucking the water down into an invisible mouth. Lucas's stomach tightened. He took a step back. The ripples grew stronger, circling tighter and tighter until the middle of the lake bubbled like boiling water. Then from the foam, a shape began to rise. At first, Lucas thought it was just his reflection warping on the surface. But no, the water shaped itself into a face. His own face. Except it wasn't him. The watery reflection looked pale, lifeless, and broken. The eyes were pitch black, hollow, staring straight into his soul. Its lips twisted into a crooked smile, stretching wider and wider until it no longer looked human at all. Lucas stumbled backward, almost slipping on the mud. He tore his eyes away, breathing hard. When he dared to look again, the water was still, perfectly calm, as though nothing had ever moved. But Lucas knew he wasn't imagining things anymore. Something was alive in that lake. Something that had just noticed him. And it was smiling. Lucas stood frozen, his breath shallow, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't shake the image of that twisted reflection smiling at him. The lake looked calm again, but the silence pressing around him felt heavier now, almost alive. He told himself to leave. Just turn around and walk back to the house. But his legs didn't move. Something about the water held him there, as if invisible strings tied him to the shore. Then he heard it. A whisper. Soft. Low. Carrying across the still surface of the lake. Lucas. His blood ran cold. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. It wasn't just any voice. It was his father's. The father who had died 2 years ago. Lucas blinked, his throat tightening. Dad? He whispered back, his voice breaking. The lake answered. Come closer. He took an unsteady step toward the water, his shoes sinking slightly into the damp mud. His heart told him to run, but the sound of his father's voice tugged at him, pulling him in. I can't believe this, Lucas muttered. His chest ached as memories of his father rushed back. The way he laughed, the way he spoke. The voice from the water was exactly the same. Don't be afraid, son, the whisper continued. I'm here. Just a little closer. Tears stung Lucas's eyes. Part of him knew this was impossible. His father was gone, buried. But another part of him, a desperate, aching part, wanted to believe. The water began to stir again, bubbling softly as if something beneath the surface was waiting. The whisper grew louder, sweeter, wrapping around his thoughts like a rope. Closer, closer. Lucas crouched at the edge, leaning in. His reflection wavered on the black surface, his pale face staring back at him. But as the bubbles grew stronger, the reflection changed again. It was no longer his face. It was the drowned, twisted version, the one with hollow eyes and the crooked smile. And in his father's voice it whispered, "Join me." Lucas stumbled back from the edge of the lake, his heart hammering so hard he could barely breathe. The voice had been his father's, but the face staring back at him wasn't. It was something darker, something pretending. "I need to get out of here," he whispered to himself. His hands shook as he turned, ready to run. But before he could take a step, the ground beneath him shifted. The mud at the edge of the water bubbled and churned, as though something was moving just under the surface. And then it happened. A pale, slimy hand shot out of the black water. Its fingers long and crooked, nails sharp like claws. It grabbed Lucas's ankle with icy strength, yanking him down to the ground. His knees slammed into the mud as he screamed, "Let go! Let go of me!" The grip was freezing, so cold it burned his skin. He kicked wildly with his other foot, his heel smashing against the wrist of the thing holding him. The hand tightened, pulling harder, dragging him toward the water inch by inch. Lucas dug his fingers into the muddy ground, clawing at the earth to stop himself from sliding closer to the lake. His nails ripped, dirt wedged under them, but it wasn't enough. The hand was stronger. His shoe slipped off in the struggle, and for a terrifying second, his bare foot dangled just above the surface. He could feel the icy mist rising from the water, like cold breath against his skin. With a desperate cry, Lucas twisted his body and kicked again, this time striking the hand square in the wrist. The creature hissed, a sound that wasn't human, more like steam escaping from a broken pipe. The hand loosened. Lucas ripped his leg free, scrambling backward until he was several feet from the shore, panting and shaking. The water stilled. The hand was gone. But Lucas knew the truth now. There was something alive in that lake. Something that wanted him. And it wasn't going to stop. Lucas's chest heaved as he staggered backward, his shoes caked in mud, his clothes damp from the struggle. His ankle throbbed where the hand had gripped him, red marks already forming on his skin. He wanted to run, but something made him look back at the lake one last time. The water had gone still again, too still, as though nothing had happened. It was flat, dark, and mirror-like under the moonlight. Slowly, against every bit of instinct in his body, Lucas's eyes dropped to his reflection. At first it looked normal. His pale face, wide eyes, hair damp with sweat. But then, as he leaned closer, the reflection began to shift. His eyes in the water grew darker, hollow, black pits swallowing all light. His mouth twisted into a wide, unnatural grin, stretching far too much to belong to a human. The reflection's head tilted slightly, moving in a way Lucas hadn't moved at all. "No," Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. "That's not me." The reflection's lips began to move, but no sound came. Then suddenly, a voice slithered into his ears, not from the air, but from inside his own head. "You've made a mistake," it whispered. "You shouldn't have come here." Lucas's heart dropped. His reflection raised a hand, slowly, mockingly, and pressed a finger to its lips as if to say, "Shoo, it's too late now." He stumbled back, shaking his head. "You're not real. This isn't real." His voice cracked, breaking the silence around him. But the reflection only smiled wider, its hollow eyes never leaving his. Then, in a slow, jerking movement, it lifted both hands, as if reaching out from beneath the water to drag him in. Lucas fell to his knees, covering his face, refusing to look. The air felt heavy, choking him, his lungs desperate for breath. When he finally opened his eyes again, the reflection was gone. The lake was calm, but the feeling lingered, the sick, bone-deep certainty that whatever lived in that water had claimed him already. Lucas staggered to his feet, his breath shallow and uneven. He couldn't take it anymore. The voices, the reflection, the hand. Every part of his body screamed at him to run. Without another thought, he turned and bolted into the forest. The fog was thicker now, curling around the trees like pale smoke. Branches slapped against his arms as he pushed through, his flashlight beam swinging wildly. His footsteps pounded the dirt path, but behind him, there were more. Wet, dragging footsteps. At first, they sounded distant, but with every second, they grew closer. The sound was wrong, like something heavy being pulled across the ground, mixed with the splashing of water. Lucas dared to glance over his shoulder. That was when he saw it. The thing from the lake. It was crawling out of the fog, tall and skeletal, its body dripping with weeds and mud. Its limbs bent in ways they shouldn't, cracking with every movement. Its eyes were hollow sockets, but they burned with something hungry. Lucas's stomach twisted. He pushed himself harder, branches clawing his face, his legs burning with effort. The whispers began again, echoing all around him, though the creature's mouth never moved. "Don't run. It's useless, you belong to us now." "No," Lucas cried out, his voice breaking. His chest ached, lungs screaming for air, but he refused to slow down. The forest seemed endless. Every tree looked the same. The path curved and split, and for a terrifying moment, Lucas thought he was lost. But then, through the fog, he saw the faint outline of a house. His aunt's house. Safety. He forced his legs to move faster, nearly tripping over roots. The sound behind him grew louder. Snapping branches, dragging limbs, that awful wet slithering noise. It was close. Too close. Lucas threw himself forward, crashing out of the trees and onto the dirt yard of the house. He stumbled up the steps, yanking the door open, and slammed it shut behind him. For a moment, everything was quiet. But deep inside, Lucas knew the chase wasn't over. The lake's creature had found him, and it wouldn't stop now. Lucas slammed the door shut and pressed his back against it, gasping for air. His heart pounded in his chest, his clothes soaked with sweat and mud. For a few seconds, the house was silent. Only the ticking of the old clock in the hallway broke the stillness. Then footsteps echoed above him. Noah and Eliza rushed down the stairs, their eyes wide when they saw him. "Lucas! What happened?" Eliza cried, her face pale. He shook his head, trembling. It tried to drag me in. Something in the lake, it grabbed me. It followed me here." His voice cracked with fear, words spilling out too fast. Noah frowned, his lips pressed tight. "We told you not to go there. We warned you." Lucas dragged his sleeve across his face, trying to steady himself. "No, you don't understand. It's real. There's something in that water, something alive." Eliza looked at his ankle. The skin was bruised, marked by red finger-shaped welts. She gasped softly and whispered, "It's already touched you." Lucas swallowed hard. His hands shook as he backed away from the window, but his eyes couldn't help drifting toward the glass. And that's when he saw it. Not outside, not in the forest, but in the reflection of the window itself. His own face stared back at him, pale, wet, lifeless. Its eyes were pitch black, its mouth curved into that same crooked smile he had seen in the lake. The reflection moved a second slower than him, lagging behind, like a shadow that wasn't his own. "No," Lucas whispered, stepping back. His voice shook. "That's not me." Eliza grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. "It's too late, Lucas. Once you've seen it, it never lets you go." Lucas's chest tightened as the reflection in the glass tilted its head, grinning wider, pressing its hand against the other side of the window. And in that moment, Lucas realized the villagers were right. The lake didn't need to drown you to claim you. It just needed you to look. They told Lucas never to go near the lake. They told him the water remembers every face that looks into it. But he didn't listen. Now no matter where he goes, the lake goes with him. In mirrors. In windows. In every reflection, it's waiting. Smiling back. Some warnings are not meant to be ignored. Because the lake never forgets. The number would call again. And next time, She might not escape. Some numbers should never ring again. Emily thought she could escape the calls, but the dead don't always stay silent. Sometimes when the phone lights up at night, it isn't a mistake, and it isn't a prank. It's an invitation. And if you ever see a call from someone who's long gone, don't answer. Because once you do, they know you're listening. And they will never stop calling.